Hey, welcome on in, guys. Tobin here with you, and thanks for checking out the channel. I appreciate you guys. Miami Heat, they'll be back in action tonight. I don't know when you guys are watching this, but we will do a game recap of that as the Heat get going against Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs. This was Khalil Ware's coming out party, so very curious about this upcoming matchup tonight with this. And the other thing that hopefully we'll get a little looky-loo at, I think Davion Mitchell's going to play just based on the fact that he spoke to the media at the podium today. But he, Hella Larson, Kasparas Yakachonis all did a little bit. Probably won't get official word. I don't think they do injury reports the same in the preseason, so I don't think we'll get official word until Eric Spoelstra speaks to the media at 5:45. 5:45 is when we'll get an idea of that. But I will not be boots on the ground tonight for this one, but I will be watching. So we will have a full recap of this game and get into all that stuff. But I wanted to get into the Giannis stuff a little bit just because it is kind of been the topic of the week. Shams Charania, who for sure has like gone into this Giannis thing, definitely thought this year. This is my read on it, okay, when it comes to the Giannis thing. Because Shams comes out yesterday and he reports that Giannis definitely, remember, he was saying all offseason, he's weighing his options. And yesterday, the report basically was that Giannis and the Bucks apparently had a meeting. He had a meeting with the GM and, I guess wasn't convinced that they had enough to win. And there was apparently some exclusivity with who the Bucks negotiated with. So they had a trade talks with the Knicks that didn't really go anywhere because I believe, to my knowledge, I don't think the Knicks have a lot of draft capital. They basically have a ton of high-priced players, which there's nothing wrong with that. The Knicks have a very good team. They went in all on their moves of OG Anunoby, and they made the Cat trade, and they made the Mikal Bridges trade. Now, I mean, would the Bucks want those guys to flip elsewhere? Maybe, I don't know. But apparently the trade talks went nowhere. And so Giannis ends up, he's going to play with the Bucks. But there's a lot of ether stuff floating in the ether around Giannis that has come out this week that certainly makes it feel like this could actually be the year where it's winding down. So Giannis apparently has an eye on the getting the hell out of there is what it feels like. Now, we've been around here a while. We've all thought Giannis is going to leave forever, and Milwaukee fans probably are being driven nuts by the fact of like, why are you guys continuing to want Giannis to leave? And look, I don't know what to tell you. It's basically because, I don't know, every time the guy does an interview in the offseason, he talks about leaving. And it does feel like he wants to go to a big-time market. He wants to go to a glamour market, whether that be LA, whether that be New York, whether that be the Miami Heat. But I will say, the Miami Heat are definitely in a different spot, and I want to get to this as far as it relates to our team, which I cover mostly on this channel. Because I think that the Heat's interest on Giannis has got to be in a pretty different place than we were when we were talking about Giannis maybe a couple of years ago in the Jimmy Butler era. Because, the Miami Heat aren't exactly, if you look at the roster right now, the way that it is, in a spot to be like, hey, Giannis, we got a contender waiting for you right now. And this is a much better situation. Because I do think that if you're Giannis, and the reason that probably New York was the team is like, hey, yeah, New York is clearly going to be one of the better teams in the East this year. And has been in the conference finals. And so, like, he's looking at being like, I want to live there, big market. I could be the guy who wins for New York. Boom. That's like all-time legacy stuff. He did say at his Miami scrum that he talks, he thinks a lot about legacy, and certainly anybody who's able to take the Knicks over the top, they're going to be thought of in a different way. So, but this is going to be an interesting year because, Windhorst comes out this week and he's like, well, the expectation is that his days are numbered. Either that's this year, in the middle of the year, or that it could happen sometime in the summer. Now, I would tell you it's more likely that it's going to happen in the summer, but Luka got traded in the middle of the year. There definitely wasn't as much smoke as this. I mean, there was like no smoke with the Luka thing. That's why it was one of the more jarring trades in NBA history. But with Giannis, it is going to be interesting because the Bucks feel like the Bucks are in a bit of a weird spot because, Giannis may want to have one foot out the door, but I just think the Bucks realize because of their draft situation and maybe what's out there in the market of what they need to get back in a trade, I think they probably realize that our best option is just go down with the ship until Giannis can't take it anymore, and that's why you make the Miles Turner move, desperate as it seems for your cap, and just being, boom, obliterating the Damian Lillard thing. I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, whether the Heat get Giannis Antetokounmpo or don't get Giannis Antetokounmpo, which based on their track record, really, I can even tell you, they probably won't. Now, will I put on the whale outfit if Shams comes out and says the Heat are on his multiple team list? Which, by the way, Shams did point out that if there is a negotiation and there is some other, like, it's not going to be a one-team thing. This is not just a Knicks or bust thing. So he very well could be interested in coming to Miami. I have no idea. We know that the Heat have had a long affinity for Giannis. But I do want to say, whether the Heat end up with Giannis or don't end up with Giannis, I could not think of a franchise I would be more happy to lose their star than the Milwaukee Bucks, because you guys know what you did. You stuck your beak in the Damian Lillard business when you guys shouldn't have. You should have just let it be. And maybe you guys would have been in a better spot. The whole Giannis and Dame thing did not work out so swimmingly, but there was only one place that guy wanted to go, and you allowed this Joe Cronin to weasel in there and convince you to let him trade Damian Lillard to you. So you guys reap what you sow. Whatever. I'm not even saying this. If he ends up with the Miami Heat, cool. He probably won't. But I'm saying this genuinely is just a petty term of revenge. I'm glad that Giannis wants to leave you because you guys deserve it for sticking your beak in the Miami Heat's business, okay? You made Damian Lillard so miserable that he went back to Joe Cronin. You cut him high and dry. He on one leg, he couldn't wait to scoot the hell out of Milwaukee. And by the way, this is no knock on Milwaukee, all right? I've never been to Milwaukee, all right? I don't like to speak of cities that I've never been to and don't know, except Cleveland. We all know Cleveland sucks. But I don't say this as a South Floridian to just like brag about, living in paradise. I'm sure that you guys have redeeming qualities in Milwaukee. Okay. And I'm sure Giannis loves a lot of the things that he's done in Milwaukee. But I have not seen as many signs as somebody who cannot wait to get out of Milwaukee. Now, I don't know what to make of this report that there was an international report that basically said Giannis's wife and kids have permanently moved to Greece. And then Giannis said something on Instagram that was kind of Google translated that I think he was kind of pissed about this report getting on. The translate terms said they were lying, but I don't know if he was just more pissed about the idea that they're putting details out about his kids being at what school they were at and whatnot. I don't know. But what I do know is if that's true, that Giannis's family would prefer to stay in Athens, which he talks about going to Greece and looking over the ocean, and every single time you could see the twinkle in his eye, which, by the way, that would be a feather in Miami's cap because we got great oceans, dude. We have the greatest ocean. But that's such a terrible excuse. We have the greatest ocean. It is beautiful. Biscayne Bay, the ocean. Mwah, I'm telling you. Giannis, you ever been to Peanut Island? You like snorkeling? Of course you do. Parrotfish galore, dude. But if you're family, okay, I know one thing. Like, it's one thing that, hey, your kids are in school, they're comfortable. It's across the country. We dealt with this with poor Andrew Wiggins last year, right? With his baby being born and he had to be across the country. That's very hard. But like that's almost when that happens, it tells me two things. One, if it's true, Mrs. Antetokounmpo doesn't want to be freezing her ass off anymore. Okay. What was it that he tweeted out during his tweet storm this summer? What is he like? Florida cities. Okay. And again, I don't think we're getting them, but I'm just throwing it out there. Get to the Heat here in a second. But if that's true, like, one, how much could your family be sick of freezing their ass off in Milwaukee? And then two, that's almost setting you up to be more miserable. Because one thing Giannis does he seems like a very big family man, okay? Seems to love his wife. Those two are very much in your face with their adorable PDA on the Instagram comments, and, great for them. I'm happy that they got an awesome marriage. So if he has an awesome marriage, and that is true, it's almost like if that's the case, it's two that. One, maybe your family is sick of living in that city, and then two, you're almost trying to make your situation more uncomfortable so the Bucks are uncomfortable, so they'll move you at some point. Because that's what we're all wondering. The Bucks have basically drawn a semi-line in the sand, kind of like the Heat did with Jimmy Butler last year. And they're like, hey, we're not trading you. And the Bucks are like, hey, we're not trading you. We got you these guys. We're going to try and win. We got Doc Rivers as the coach. We want to give a go at this thing. And Giannis is like, all right. By the way, notice that he didn't start. He had COVID, and then it was like, oh, you guys are going where? Oh, you're going to Miami for camp? Boom, I'll be on the next bird over there. But I look at this situation, and it's like, all right, Giannis seems like a really decent dude, and I'm sure has an appreciation for the Bucks organization. I don't think that he just wants to be dropping the nuclear bomb of ruining their franchise, right? Not a lot of guys are good at that, making a stink and, living with the result. I think it took Jimmy a little bit to even be like, am I really going to do this? And he had to tap into his Joker, right? Dyeing the hair green and starting to cause chaos again. And so if the Giannis family report is true, and again, there was an Instagram post, I don't know what but if it is, that feels to me like Giannis is always almost putting himself in a position to be more miserable so he can be in a mood to make it uncomfortable for the Bucks. That's my read on it. I don't know. As for the Heat, Barry Jackson, the legend, he comes out, he has a report, and this is what he had to say. He says, the Heat has remained interested in trying to acquire Bucks star Giannis Antetokounmpo, but he has never seriously considered any team except for the New York Knicks this past offseason, as Shams Charania reported on Tuesday. The report said that the Knicks and Bucks spoke this summer, but the Bucks ultimately didn't want to trade the two-time MVP, who did not request a trade. If Antetokounmpo asked out, the Heat is prepared to make an offer that did not include Bam Adebayo, according to the source, but it's unlikely that any offer would be seriously considered. If Antetokounmpo requests a trade at some point, it remains to be seen if the Heat would ever change their mind about offering Adebayo, but it's unlikely that the Bucks star would want to join a Heat team without Adebayo, whom he shares an agent with, so it's most likely all moot. Antetokounmpo said publicly that winning is very important to him and that he wants to compete for a championship. And that is the part where the Heat might be in trouble. Unless Giannis is like, hey, dude, the place I want to live. And he has mentioned on the speed thing, taxes and living in Florida and, all that type of stuff. Like he keeps an eye on that. But obviously Giannis makes oodles of money. I don't know how much the state tax thing is a needle mover. But the Heat thing for me is when we were talking about any Giannis pursuits, you're talking about a world where you have Bam and Jimmy, and then you're the third guy, and you're adding that in. And even if it's a weird fit, talent rules. Yeah, if Giannis wants to come here, we don't really know what the Heat are going to be this year. I'm not here to tell you that the Heat can't be any kind of decent. I'm very much looking forward to this year. People think like I'm crazy saying that, but I am genuinely excited to see the mix of these guys. Norman Powell, Wiggins committed. You guys know I can't wait to see what Nico does. Bam Adebayo in this offense. And, Tyler coming back from injury, Davion Mitchell, what's the mix there? But I have also said this feels like a team that's going to make a move at some point because it looks like a team to me that has a lot of, Spo talks about the versatility. There's a lot of variety, and it feels like there's a lot of directions that the Heat could go. And I do think eventually we need to get to a point where they do pick a road. Because if the Heat aren't in any consideration for Giannis, which I don't know why they would be, other than this is an awesome place to live, and Giannis apparently likes the ocean. Yeah, could Bam get you in the game for it? Of course. He's one of the, if you're really willing to trade him. And, would the Heat get to a point where they would trade Bam about? I think it has to be like Bam going to them. Like there's Bam stuff that's all around. But I do think, and I've said this, Um, as much as I root for Bam Adebayo, I do think this is a big year for the Heat to even look at him and be like, hey, how big a piece is he? Now, he's obviously one of the best defenders on the planet. He's super unselfish. He's a great locker room guy. He's a pillar of the community, and is a big man who can get you 20 points, 10 rebounds, and has been in high profile games and has been big in those games. Hell, Giannis versus Bam, and yes, Jimmy was amazing in those series, but Bam was very big in those Bucks series too. And not like Jimmy 56 good, but like, dude, that the closeout game, the way that he was up against Brook Lopez, who was giving him nightmares in some of those games, he was tremendous. He's really good, and at a time defends a guy like Giannis as good as anybody in the league. So I just look at it and I'm like, I don't know what the package is unless there's a very limited list and the Heat can outmuscle. Let's just say that Giannis says it's the Knicks, the Lakers, and the Heat. Let's just say we're on the list because he just wants. Do the Heat have better stuff than those guys do? Well, if you're going just star for star, they want like Cat, and then they're going to flip Cat for something. Then yeah, do the Heat have anybody? If they're not willing to trade Bam, do they have anybody who can match Cat? No. If it's OG Anunoby, if it's Mikal Bridges, then we can get into some debate there, obviously. But if they're going to give up Cat for Giannis and maybe a pick wherever their situation is, then if the Heat aren't willing to give up Bam, it doesn't feel like a thing, their situation in the game that they're really in. And but like, look, is a package that has Ware and Tyler and Yakachonis and would Nico have to be in the deal? I don't know. Or them giving whatever the salary matches of Powell and Wiggins to then flipped somewhere else. Like, yeah, the Heat have an interesting it's an interesting package, but unless they're gonna be willing to trade Bam, then I don't know if they have a trump card on somebody like New York if they look at it, because we've seen this with teams when the stars get traded, like they're going to look for the one piece that they can then try to get for other pieces, right? It's a little bit how the Damian Lillard thing went, even though it didn't exactly go according to plan. And and then you have to wonder, like, all right, well, and if Tyler's in that package, like, are the Bucks into like, hey, we're signing up for a long-term free with Tyler, even though he's a Wisconsin guy, you could have some type of stuff there, and you're gonna lock him into an extension. I don't know. I mean, maybe because once you trade Giannis, it's like Nuke City. But look, ultimately, until I see something that truly says that Giannis wants to be in Miami, I kind of feel like this is a weird thing to even pursue, because the Heat don't feel like they're in the Jimmy Butler era right now. The Heat are at a big time pivot era. I don't even know if this makes sense for their organization. We obviously know they've loved Giannis for a long time, and I also and one more thing on the agent point, Alex Saratzis, who is Giannis's agent, Bam's agent. I believe he interviewed for the Hawks GM job this year. I got a hard time believing that his agent, knowing how much Bam loves it down here, I got a hard time believing that his agent is going to be like hooding Miami on the list if he thinks that Bam's going to end up in Milwaukee. So I do think there's a little bit of politics there as well. I just don't think he would do that. I think he's looking at it, he goes, no, Bam's his team. And if you're his agent, you're going to be like, well, I want this guy to be the face of the Heat for as long as possible, and he keeps getting oodles of money. So I don't think he's going to put Bam in that position either, as an agent. So that it to me is one of the big deterrents, like why I don't think Bam would ever be put on the table for Giannis Antetokounmpo. So, but it's definitely going to be a thing to follow. It's hard to ignore all of the stuff around it. And then whether it's going to be with the Heat or not, like, look, if he goes to the Knicks, yeah, that certainly is, you're going to add a two-time former MVP to a team in your conference. Yeah, you're going to be looking up at the mountain to scale yet again, even with the Heat having success against Giannis in past series. and feeling comfortable about how the job Bam can do, like that's going to be a loaded squad if you swap out Cat for Giannis Antetokounmpo. So it is something of note that we do have to keep an eye on. But I think that if you're just talking player, the top player in a trade, I don't think that he can hang. When it comes to picks and unlocking stuff, yeah, they could make something interesting. I don't think it's a, especially for a team that needs, draft capital like the Bucks do. But would Giannis want to be here? He'd just really have to like the city, the idea of playing with Bam. If they don't have Jovic in that trade, does that work? Bam, Jovic, and Giannis, is that a basketball fit? Who the hell's handling the basketball? If you keep Powell, okay, you got something there, and Davion. All right, so you still got a backcourt that makes sense. You probably would have to put Jovic in the trade, you would think. Right? Like that only makes sense. Like it doesn't, like, is he even going to play with a Giannis? Because Giannis likes the ball in his hands. Like, look, Nico can shoot, so I think there is something there. And then you'd have like that piranha defense. I mean, I think they would figure it out. They could figure it out. But the question is, could you even dream up a package without giving him up? I don't even know. I don't even know if that, even if you were willing to include Ware and Jovic, is that something that would tantalize the Bucks more so than a Karl-Anthony Towns? You'd probably have to get 4 picks. And so then you're talking about, well, is there any other thing that he can drain out to get another asset somewhere else? I don't know. A lot of this stuff feels as pipe dreamy as it ever has with the Miami Heat. But it doesn't feel like the Giannis stuff is going anywhere this year. It feels very much like this is going to be something lingering over that team all season long.